Brother McClung, your University Church of Christ family in Abilene, Texas is so very happy to be celebrating your 100th birthday soon. In fact, tell me the very date of your birth date.
November 23rd, 1912.
1912? Well, that was 100 years ago, wasn't it?
Oh, almost 100 years ago.
Well, we're so pleased that we have the technology right here at the University Church and that Joey Roberts can interview you on video for the party that we're going to have in November of this year. You have certainly lived 100 years, almost 100 years. You've lived that very well, and we want to learn about you and where you started out in life and who your parents are. Tell us who your parents are and where you were born.
My father's name was Charles. My mother's name was Vera. And we lived on a farm up in Lubbock.
And what was your mother's maiden name?
Brown.
Brown.
Vera Brown. And her father was an elder in the Broadway church.
There in
I'll
Lubbock.
tell more about him.
Surely. Well, what were the living circumstances when you were born there? Tell us about your home place and where you grew up.
Well, we lived on a small farm, and our living wasn't very good as far as financial is concerned. I don't know, usually our grocery bill for that we had to buy would run about $200 a year. And the rest of it we raised, like hogs and calves and vegetable garden and so forth, watermelons.
And what was your favorite to eat?
My favorite one.
What was your favorite to eat of all those things they raised on the farm?
Oh,
What did you like best?
well, I had a pony. She was half Shetland pony, and therefore she wasn't a big horse. But me and my oldest sister rode the pony to school for 6 years, and we rode a little over 2 miles free. Sometimes the creek between us and the school would be up high enough, the water be running over the bridge high enough to where our legs hung down in the water.
Oh my! Well, now, did your mother and dad have other children? And if so, what were their names and where are they now? What about your brothers and sisters?
All of them are deceased.
And what were their names? How many boys and how many girls did your
Well,
parents have?
I had a little girl named Pearl. She passed away. She passed away right shortly after birth. Had another daughter named Grace. Had another son named Alton. One named Ray. And one named, we called him Jakey. And he was roommate to Don Morris. And another son named Lynn, and one named Alvin.
Well, that was a nice big family then.
Yeah,
Did you all get along fine?
8 children.
Oh my, how wonderful. Well, I imagine that was a happy circumstance for you to grow up with those brothers and sisters, wasn't it? I imagine you enjoyed that very much.
Yeah.
Well then, what do you remember about your childhood, Brother McClung?
Well,
Do you remember what happened during your childhood
Yes.
that was impressive to you?
it was hay cutting time. And one of my uncles, Uncle Ray, had a team of mules mowing hay. And when you mow hay, every stalk just falls right in place, the same direction, you know. And I was watching that hay as it fell on the ground, and all of a sudden, I've come to the fact that I had let that sickle run into my legs, and I have two large scars on my both legs now for that sickle cut them.
Well, that was quite a souvenir from your
Oh,
childhood,
yes,
then,
it was.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and they took me to the house, carried me to the house, and my grandfather and my dad and mother held me down while they put iodine on it, and I just about went out through the roof.
Well, were your parents faithful Christians? Did all of you grow up in the
Well,
church?
they were until I was 13 years old, and my parents broke up, and we had to get rid of the farm, move to town, and my dad didn't go to church much longer. My mother did, and of course, I had to go to work when I was 13 to pay a drug bill that they owed and that they couldn't pay. So I went to work for $3.50 a week to pay the drug bill.
And what town was that where you worked? What was the name of the town, Lubbock?
Yeah,
It was Lubbock.
Lubbock, Texas.
I see.
Yeah. What?
And then tell us about your schooling, where you went to school.
Well, the Depression came on, and I went to a grade school called Carter Grade School. Then I went to the Central School, where we had upper grades. And I started to high school, but as far as I got was the 10th grade because of the Depression, and I had to work in order to help me support my mom and two sisters.
So you didn't go past the 10th grade then, in school? You didn't go past the 10th grade?
No, didn't ever get a chance to go back to there. And one of my uncles was a physics teacher in the high school, and I had a class under him.
Well, wonderful, wonderful. I imagine that was a very enjoyable thing for you to have someone related to you to teach you. And then what about your plans for college? What made you decide to go to ACC?
Well, I knew Don Morris. We came down here in 1932, 24.
24.
To see my uncle graduate, and Don Morris. And
who was your uncle that graduated? Who was your uncle that graduated?
My Uncle Jakey, and Don Morris did too.
I see.
Yeah.
And he graduated in 1924 along with Don Morris then?
24, yeah.
24. And then when did you come to ACC?
Huh?
What year did you come to ACC?
I came here 34.
In 1934.
Yeah.
And tell us about your college days. Did you participate in
Well,
a lot of activities?
Yeah. Well, not having a high school diploma, Brother Morris let me enter school as a special student.
I see.
And we had 625 students that year. And I worked for Brother Paul Witt and Brother Brown,
Earl
Brown, in the bookstore. They had the bookstore at that time. And we had a soda fountain. And of course, all the students came in the bookstore to get their mail and buy gym clothes and other things that they needed in the college, you know.
Why, sure.
Yeah.
And who did you room with at college? Who was your roommate at college?
Oh, Norval Young. And
you mean the M. Norval Young?
M. Norval Young. And let's see.
And did you engage in a number of activities while you were here at college? Did you engage in a number of activities? What did you were you interested in?
No, my time was pretty well taken up by the bookstore. And Norva and I did go down to the gym one day when there were no classes there. And we we had these big round steel hooks. And we were swinging one of those hooks, you know, backward and forward. And I thought, well, this is pretty cute. I'll just run my leg through that hook and sit in it and rock. Well, I missed the hook and I fell on the hardwood floor.
Uh-oh.
And I injured my back, and I've had back trouble all my life.
Well, what a remembrance. That was quite a souvenir too
Yeah.
then from your college
Yeah.
days. And then how long did you stay at ACC? How many years?
Got pretty close to 2 years. And things got hard at home again. So I had to go back to work, Lubbock, go back to work in the drugstore.
Yes.
And I worked in that drugstore 10 years.
Oh my, and helped your family then.
Yeah.
And then when did you decide to preach?
Huh?
When did you decide to
Oh, I
preach?
decided to preach when I was real small. And when I was about 7 years old, I wanted to practice preaching. So I'd get up on the haystacks and I'd preach to the weeds. We had tall weeds all around the haystack there, and I'd preach to the weeds. And then my grandfather had leukemia, and he was in bed fast. But a couple of days before he passed away, he began to call his sons in and have that final fatherly talk with them, you know. And then he called my mother in, and last of all, he called me in, and he asked me, wanted me to promise him that I would continue making a study on my own to be a preacher.
Indeed.
And I did that. And the first time I preached was at the black church in Lubbock, Texas. Yeah,
Wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful.
yeah,
Well, I know that must have been quite an experience for you then, the very first
yeah.
time.
Of course, the black people, they were thrilled. You know, they'd say amen and say on, brother.
Why, sure. Wonderful.
Oh.
Well, that was great.
Well-
And then you decided to marry later then? When did you marry? When did you decide to marry? And how
Oh.
did you meet your wife?
Well, let's see. I guess along about January of 1936, my sweetheart here at the college lived in Houston. So I wrote her a letter and sent a diamond engagement ring. And I, very crude, I said, if you'd like to be my wife, keep the ring, and if you don't want to be my wife, send it back.
Oh, that was a good proposition. Well, I hope she didn't send it
Yeah,
back.
she didn't turn me down.
Oh,
So
my.
we got married in April, and we were married 16 years.
Now tell us her name,
Ann Wicks
and where was she from? Houston?
from Houston.
Yes, a big city girl then.
Yeah.
Oh, my, and you
Big
met her at
city.
ACC.
Yeah. Yeah, I met her in ACC.
Well, splendid.
And we,
Well, I think that's great that you married. And then what was the date of your marriage? Do you remember? What year did you marry?
in April of 1936.
Of 1936. And where were you living then when you married?
Oh, we came to Abilene, met here in Abilene. I came down from Lubbock. She came up on the train to Abilene. And we were looking for Brother Homer Haley to say our ceremony. We found out that he was on a meeting up at Hamlin. So we got in the car again and went up to Hamlin, and there were a bunch of ACC students at Hamlin that went up to hear him preach, and they found out that we were there and were going to get married, and they could hardly pay any attention to what Brother Haley was saying. But anyway, we went downstairs to the apartment where Woody Holden lived, and Brother Haley married us.
Well, splendid. And then what did you decide to do after marriage? Where did you live then?
Well, we went back to Lubbock, and I worked in the drugstore for a while. And then we decided to move to California. Brother John T. Smith found a job for me in the children's home at Ontario, California. So we moved to California, and I had the teenage boys, and my wife had the little kids. And the boys were county boys. They were the tough gang, you know. And they planned on shooting me, and one of them spilled the beans and told me that. So we made arrangements so that they wouldn't have an opportunity to kill me.
So how long were you at the Ontario Children's Home then?
Well, we were just taking the place of Brother Maupin, and he went off to school this summer, but he planned to come back in the fall. So he came back, and we got on the train and came back to Lubbock. And we stayed in Lubbock a few days, and then we got on a train and went to Houston. And I finally found a job in another drugstore. And I worked there for a little while, but all this time at Houston, I was preaching around at congregation around Houston. I filled in for Burton Kaufman sometime.
Wonderful.
And we stayed there, and I preached in different congregations, with the exception of Lake Jackson, Texas, and Tomball, Texas, and Montgomery, Texas. I preached for those places several years, and the church at church at Lake Jackson couldn't support a preacher, so I got a job. I happened to know quite a bit about electrical work. I got a job with Dow Chemical as an electrician, and we worked for Dow, and I preached for the church there for free. Then we moved up to Tomball after that was over. And
so how long were you at Tomball then?
well, I've forgotten exactly when I went there, but I left Tomball in '52, and the reason I left was we were expecting another child, number 2, and we went to the hospital the morning the baby was supposed to be born, and she was on the delivery table, and she strained real hard and burst a blood vessel in her lungs, and she and his baby both died right there before you could say hello. So then I didn't hardly fit to preach right then. So my daughter and I went back to Houston, and we lived with my father-in-law, and he was real good to me, just like a father.
And what was his name?
Ed Wicks.
I see. And so that was your first baby. What was her name?
Doris Ann.
Doris Ann.
Yeah.
And she's with you today here in
Yes,
Abilene.
sir, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, then, how old was she, Doris Ann, when your mother died? When your wife died?
15 years old.
15 years old. So you took the teenager back to Houston with you, and lived with your father-in-law.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And how long were you there then before you went west?
Well, let's see, I went to California with Doris Ann to visit my mother.
And where did she live?
Yeah, and she lived in Maywood, California. And we went out to California there, and on Sunday morning we went to the Huntington Park Church. And my mother introduced me to a lady, Pauline Robinson. Well, we met each other, and she went over on one side of the auditorium, and I went over on the other where my mother sat. And we didn't pay any attention to each other much. So we went along till about January of 1952. And about January of 52, 52, yeah, no. Anyway, I wrote her a letter.
From Houston?
Pauline, yeah. And in June of 52, she came to Houston to visit me. And we had corresponded for several months. She came to Houston. My mother was in Houston at that time. She came to Houston and visited, and we decided while she was there that we'd tie the knot.
Oh, my.
So...
Well, what did your mother think about that?
Well, she liked Pauline real well. They were good friends. So I went to California, and November 21st we got married. And then I did a lot of preaching in California, and worked with the Southgate congregation, and
in Los Angeles? In Los Angeles?
Yeah, preaching and so forth. I also preached at Norco for a while, and for Lake Jackson, yeah. So we ended up just about, Pauline and I were married 47 years.
Oh, my.
And she had cancer and died in, let's see, she died, I've forgotten what year now.
After 47 years of marriage?
Yeah.
And that was in California when she died?
Yeah.
And so what did you decide to do after that? Did you come back to Texas after that?
No, we moved to Montana, and I worked with the congregation in Montana, two of them, and we...
and what towns were those in Montana?
Kalispell and Columbia Falls.
I see.
Yeah. And we had two great-grandchildren. They were Pauline's grandchildren, not mine.
I see.
A boy and a girl, little fellows. When we lived in California, they lived there too. But their mom and stepdad moved to California in March of here. I can't remember. Anyway, moved to California. Moved from California to Montana. And we were about ready for a move from California anyway, so we decided we moved to Montana so we could take the kids to church and school and,
Why, sure.
and try to make Christians out of them.
Why, surely.
So we did that, and I baptized both of them.
Wonderful.
And the boy made a chiropractor, and the girl, she still lives in Montana.
Wonderful. Now, what are their names? The boy and the girl?
Michael Sora was the boy, and the girl was Robin Fisher.
I see.
Yeah,
And she's still living there in Montana?
she's still living in Montana.
Well, wonderful, well,
Yeah.
wonderful. And then when did you decide to come to Texas then?
Oh dear. Well, I continued to live by myself, and I moved back to Oregon. Pauline and I both did. And we decided that we'd move to back to Texas, and we moved back to Houston of all things, and stayed here a year and a half. And then we decided we'd move back to California, where Pauline had a home, and we went back to California, and we worked with Huntington Park a little while, and then I think that's about it.
And then you came to Texas when? When did you come to Texas then? You came back here to Abilene, Texas, when Doris and Ellis came back to Abilene, is that right?
We came back in September of 2007 and moved in with Doris and Ellis. And I play with a computer a whole lot, and now I send out some scripture every morning, and I also get a short writing called oh dear, can't think of it. It's a good sized writing, and I send it out.
Well, you blessed the lives of a lot of us.
It was a devotional. It's titled Devotional.
Yes, indeed.
And I send it out with my scripture.
Well, it's a wonderful thing for you to do.
I send it out to about 80 people.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, we're blessed by it too, Brother McClung. I imagine you've met quite a few preachers during your preaching career, haven't you?
Some of the ones was Brother John T. Smith, preached at Lubbock. Brother Liff Sanders,
Yes, indeed.
he was an older preacher, and he helped me quite a bit when I was first trying to preach. And then came to down here to Abilene again. My roommate, Norval Young, Basil Baxter, and let's see, Brother E.W. Macmillan, Otis Gatewood. I had a class under Brother Morris, and I made B in my public speaking, and I had a Bible class under old Brother Baxter, and I made good grade in it too. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, you've certainly been blessed to know so many wonderful leaders in the church and some great legendary figures.
Yeah.
And I know that you have blessed many, many people during your lifetime.
Yeah.
Do you want to pass along a word of wisdom to the group here at the party for your birthday? What wisdom would you pass along to everybody? What would you like to tell them?
Well, I've got several things here that
All right, please tell us.
Well,
What words of wisdom would you like to tell the group? What would you like to tell the group?
well, I would say to set positive goals in life, have projects that are of value not only to yourself but to other people, write letters to people who are bereaved or have troubles of life, I wrote a bulletin from 1961 until I got to where I couldn't write much, and then I started sending it out, writing it, and sending it out on my computer. So the bulletin was called Patterns for Living, and the response I had from that bulletin, I received 1,200 responses from that bulletin.
Wonderful.
I wrote 16 tracts. One of the most favorite one I had was titled When Loved Ones Are Called Away, and I've given away hundreds of those to people who've lost loved ones in death. And also another one I liked real well, and that was Good for Paul and Silas and Good Enough for Me.
Wonderful.
And I'd say that people need to develop a cheerful personality, expect others to like you. We need to give appreciation as often as we can and tell people the good that you see in their life. We thank you for our email and the response from it. I get lots of emails back from that Patterns for Living Scriptures that I send out, and the last one I'll mention is that don't emphasize your troubles to other people. One thing I do is if I see a person in Cracker Barrel, and ladies especially, that smiles, I thank her for her smile.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and you'd be amazed how many times they want to stop and talk a little while about maybe telling them hello, or complimenting their smile, and that's just about it.
Well, that's just great, Brother McClung. You blessed the lives of thousands of people, and I know you'll continue to do that. And we want to say to you, may the Lord bless and keep you the rest of your life, and right on into eternity.
When we were in California, I was working preaching school out there. I built up quite a reputation for saying weddings and funerals. And one funeral that I had that I'll always remember, there was a young couple who were strangers that came to a motel there in Southgate, California, and they had a little baby that was sick, and that little child passed away. And they asked me to preach the child's funeral, and I did, which has always been real hard for me to preach a baby's funeral. But anyway, we preached that little baby's funeral, and we went to the cemetery, and they took the little white coffin out and put it over on the lawn and set it down, and we drove away with that little coffin sitting there on the ground. And I've often wondered what happened to that little baby's body.
Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that was a special moment in time for you, and I'm glad you could remember special times like that.
Yeah.
And we want you to know that we expect you to continue to bless the lives of thousands of more people now.
Well, I hope so.
And have a wonderful, happy birthday at the 100th moment and in time, and we'll just keep celebrating those birthdays year after year.
Yeah. One thing I want to say, one more, and that is my hands they started shaking when I was about 65 years old. And they shake now. Sometimes when I get a load my fork with peas, the peas are back in my plate by the time, by the time I get the fork to my mouth.
Well, aren't you glad you can still use those wonderful hands and have such good health that you can go about and do good for others as you do every day of your life? And we just are blessed by you, Brother McClung. Wish you a wonderful, happy 100th birthday.
Thank you. I thank you and your wife so much for being my friends.
Well, you're a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Christian brother to all of us at the University Church of Christ.
Amen.